And welcome to Conservatives Talk.
And today we got a question for you. Is it investigations or legislation? We say both.
And is there really a Biden-Trudeau quid pro quo?
And since we're going to be giving you a lot of answers to some tough questions today, 2A soars in 2022, and we're going to tell you how and why.
And CNN's rail strike coverage is nothing more than a cluster.
And in the conspiracy corner, Buck's going to tell us about how Biden's oil export terminal is really nothing more than just an American last policy. Again.
This is all about America first, baby. And welcome to Conservatives Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we like to make sure that we remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content they do come across on any of our platforms. That way it helps Jamie and I to get organically higher into the news feed on all of our social media platforms. And while you're doing that, also make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way you'll always be able to stay up to date on any of the content Jamie and I produce. You'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredible smile, and you'll always be able to hear that infectious laughter. And while we're doing that, we do like to also remind our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to, because it is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to continue to produce this content and share it out as wide as absolutely possible. So one day we may actually be able to take over the world. Dreams, right?
Yeah.
He's sitting there because he knows he can't say what he's wanting to say, because I've effectively I've taken his First Amendment right on that issue.
As he should have.
And with that in mind, Jamie, would you like to give your first reminder?
Boycott hometown headlines. Hey guys, we're almost there. Continue to press forward. Let's make sure that we end this liberal agenda of taking over our news outlets and our media. Mm-hmm. And that all begins here at home with you all continuing to boycott and getting your friends to boycott hometown headlines.
Absolutely. And how about you give us your second reminder?
Yeah, man, it's been great. It's been a great 22 days since we took Stacey Abrams to pasture. And, when they called that last train ride. I had to stick one in. I had to.
He's literally spent the past several days on vacation coming up what he could say with that and trying to slide one in there on that one. Oh man.
Yep.
And I'm scared to I'm scared to go to the next one. But Jamie, how about your third reminder?
Yes. We are 6 days away from the state of Georgia performing its greatest exorcism yet. And that is removing the false prophet from our states. You know, the devil went down to Georgia and he didn't stay too long. And so we got to make sure that this is a short term for old false prophet Raphael Warnock.
That was actually very good. I really like that. That was good. I have to give that one to you.
No.
I will. We also like to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. You can find a compilation of grassroots news and newsworthy content producers on Net News Network, and you can find Net News Network by going to netnewsnetwork.net. We also like to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. Veterans for America First is a grassroots political organization that fights tooth and nail to make sure that America pursues the America First policies. And they do that through advocating and pushing America First policy, as well as those who will advocate and push on its behalf. And they do that through their media arm of Vet Voice. So Vet Voice is where you will find America First content producers, and you'll only be able to find those who are on the political front lines, fighting in the battleground in the trenches to ensure that America does remain the greatest nation in the world. And with that, Jamie, how about let's jump into that first question or really the first saying that she made with that.
Yeah. Is it investigations or legislation? And we think it's both.
Absolutely. So there was an article, actually it was less of an article, more of an opinion piece that was published through Washington Insider and the AJC. The author of this opinion piece is a guy by the name of Jamie Dupree. He's been part of this fake news media narrative for quite a while. So I'm sure you can understand where his leanings are going to be with this. So he noted at the beginning of the article that that Republicans really pushed throughout the midterm an agenda that they were going to be pursuing that would focus a lot on economic issues, especially related to some of the holiday era costs that are going to be associated with the upcoming holidays.
Yeah.
But his argument is that Republicans have since dropped that narrative and that they are only focusing on investigations.
So here's my question to the question, right?
Yes.
Is it that we've dropped that narrative, or is it that's the only thing that they're asking because they want to push that agenda?
Well, in all honesty, I actually would present the argument that these investigations are a primary reason for why, or these investigations are a primary part of the economic issues.
Which is a valid point, because when you start looking at, the amount of money that we've sent to Ukraine, the amount of money that we are continue to see issues with like what we're going to get into a big topic of is oil exports, and where all of this useless spending that, the Biden administration has kind of pushed out there.
Well, it's insider spending.
Well, and use, like, you know what I mean? And where's it going, right? We can't figure out where this money is going until we do investigations and until we figure out, do audits on it. Some of the military expenses that were out there, only 10% of it was actually like audited to know where it's supposed to, where it went. That's yes. A major lack.
So what this author is really trying to say is that they are dropping the economic issues that have that had focused on like holiday travel and meals and things like that nature for a focus on business dealings of Hunter Biden, the treatment of the January 6th defendants in jail, the actions of the FBI and Justice Department, a probe of the Education Department over threats to school boards, the possible impeachment of the Secretary of Homeland Security, a review of how social media companies treat conservatives, and an investigation into the COVID-19 outbreak. Every single one of those have massive economic impacts.
Absolutely. And they should be held accountable for it.
Oh, unquestionably.
So this idea that one is not tethered to the other is really kind of crazy to me, because you have to investigate what is being kept secret while still pushing for a stronger economy.
Absolutely. All of these have definitive ties back to the executive branch, and the executive branch being the ones that actually direct where spending can occur and where it goes outside of earmarks, like what we spoke about in our port barrel spending episode several weeks ago. So Republican or the House members can pass legislations. They control the purse strings and ideally, but you really see them kind of passing a generalized budget outside of earmarks, and then the executive branch deciding where the allocation of these funds are going to go. And we see, from what we've seen through whistleblowers, through documents, through evidence that we found, through evidence that was left at laptop repair sites, things along that nature, we see that this is something that needs to be pursued. This is something that we need to make sure that we are not being exploited as American taxpayers.
Agreed. I think Representative Andrew Clyde said it best. Accountability is coming. And that's the big thing that I think everyone, especially us conservative Republicans, has been looking forward to. We cannot no longer let this administration or that party go without some kind of recourse to all the reckless spending and actions that they're doing, just to persuade young minds and lie to them.
Oh, yes. And a big part of these investigations are going to be not just focused on Hunter, but on
The big
Fauci
guy
as well.
and Fauci. Well, I'm mainly focused on the big guy because we got to impeach him too, but Fauci as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Fauci, it was Fauci that we have seen ties to some of his companies in Wuhan that have been reportedly doing some of these virus genetic manipulations and gain of function research. So we know the fact that he has benefited from this. And he is reportedly saying is we can defend and explain, and stand by everything that we've said. I have nothing to hide. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing him get up on the or sit behind the little desk there and being grilled by an actual committee that wants to get to the bottom of the truth and is not being driven by a political agenda that aligns with his.
Yep. I can't wait, but like, everybody was talking about, the red wave wasn't what it was meant to be. And I think that it was more than what we expected. And here's the reality of it. The reality of it is winning the House is major because that gets us back in reins of controlling the budget as well as controlling what actually is held, what we're held accountable for, and making sure that the Democrats are held accountable for all of this reckless spending that they've been like just literally adding into bills for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and nothing more so than the push to raise the debt ceiling yet again.
And Yellen said that recently that she wishes that we just got rid of the debt ceiling, which is awful.
Oh yeah, if that happened, we would be so far underwater that there would be no hope for America.
None. We would never recover.
No,
never
not
recover.
at all. Never.
There was what was it? Yeah. Sorry, I even made a note of this because I felt it was very important that the economic scenario right now is so catastrophic, and to think that Yellen actually wants to come out here as a Treasury of the Secretary and I quote say get a lot of work done during this lame duck session, and hopes that the new representatives elected. Hope that is done before the new representatives that are elected take office.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself should put you in the mindset of where this administration is going and what they want to do long term.
Oh yeah,
because what they want to do is during this session, before the people who were elected, that the country said, "Hey, we don't like the way that the direction the country is going. We want to turn ship." Before they get anything done, they want to push as much through as they can. And eliminating one of the processes that keeps us together as a country, they want to get rid of.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's something that we spoke about in our last episode, in the episode 44. Lame ducks suck,
and it's just profound to me. Honestly, I just can't get over the fact that the Treasury, the head of our money, just said that what, I really would like it if y'all just gave us a blank check.
Yeah,
that's basically all that is. Hey, Democrats, before you leave office, write me a blank check that's irrevocable to the Republicans when they come into office.
So I can continue to spend as much money as I absolutely want with no ramifications whatsoever.
No ramifications. I just want to be able to spend money. And this is the same mindset that she had when she was at the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
When she was at the Fed, they wanted to be able to balance it in such a way that caused the 2008 recession. Because for those of you who don't remember, Janet Yellen was the head of the Federal Reserve when Obama was president. So what has really happened is now they just flip-flopped her and said, okay, well, instead of being in charge of the Fed, then we're going to put you in charge of actually printing the money, and we want you to ask for not having a ceiling to where we can kind of just shift policies inside the Fed and just allow you to print as much as possible once we take away the ceiling. It's no different than what they're doing with all the other agencies. They just now want to give it to the people who print our money.
Yeah, which is a terrifying thought when we see a lot of the legislation that these guys are trying to push through and pass. I mean, the current the current statutory limit for the debt ceiling is what? It's $31.4 trillion.
Yep.
And if we don't raise that debt ceiling again here shortly, then they are concerned that we won't be able to continue to borrow money to fund all of this other junk that they're blowing money on.
Yep. Which is very important, right? Because at some point the ball has to stop bouncing.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And we as conservatives know that you can only kick the can for so long. What Democrats want to do now is remove the ceiling so they can continue to kick the can down the road. And we are already teeing ourselves up for something that's even more catastrophic than the Great Recession.
Oh, yes.
It will actually be a literal depression. And the last depression left about 25% of the country, poor and broke. We're talking 40-50% could lose their net worth.
Everything.
In a matter of seconds. All because they want to continue to push policies forward, but they're mad about some tweets and, missteps of few men. Yeah,
they are. There are. And although I will say, I understand why they would do this, because this isn't just a Democrat effort and Democrat real talking point with it. It's also something that the conservatives are even considering, or the conservatives are even really considering doing as well. You had a lot of the members of the new incoming Republican leadership saying that they would use this issue as a bargaining chip in order to change future federal laws. The fact of the matter is, they need to say, no, we're high enough. I mean, $31.4 trillion is enough of debt that let's stop somewhere. Let's stop there.
Yeah. Hey,
the fact that they're willing to bargain on that,
I'm about to shock the world, right? Because that's a moderate stance, and though I understand that energy, I don't agree with it. Okay, and here's my thing: at some point, right, like just like any other person, okay, at some point you got to pay your debts off.
Yes.
Whether you finagle it to a certain point, whether you look at your budget and you can get to a certain point without having to pay certain things down. That's however you operate. But at some point, you have to pay your debts off. And I think that on a federal level, that's something that we have to understand. We make individuals do it. We make companies do it. We make states do it. Why can't we hold the federal government accountable to the same standards that we do as individuals?
Because they give states money, so the states continue to take it. They give local municipalities money, so the local municipalities continue to take it. And they give individuals money, so the individuals continue to take it as well. So as long as they're shelling out that cash, it's going to be hard to get people to vote against getting that free money.
Hey, I understand, but like Mama said, at some point there are certain things that matter more than money.
I wouldn't disagree. I would not disagree with you with that, even in the slightest.
And like that. Who sung that song? I can't remember who sings this song, but there's a song called "Buy Dirt," and
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? At some point, we got to realize that the most valuable asset that we got is dirt underneath our grounds, and the moment we lose it, we lose freedom. So we can sell out for cash for as long as we want to. At some point, we got to take a real stance on protecting the land.
Oh yeah, and well, I mean, I understand, and I completely agree with that 100%. As long as it's American soil that we're throwing millions and billions of dollars into in order to defend.
To defend, yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so
we buy it.
Another issue. Another issue with all of this that this author Jamie Dupree neglected to really bring up or even talk about much on this is the fact that the Democrats are now trying to jam through another massive budget and another massive spending proposal in connection with this debt ceiling raise, so they can allocate several $billion more to sending over to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think it's like a $40 million packet or something like that.
Well, that $40 million packet was the one that was passed in May.
Okay, so and something like out of that was only $8 million actually went to Ukraine, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, so of that $40 million, $8 million of it went towards actual weapons and giving arms to Ukraine. The rest of it's humanitarian, going to the people, going to rebuilding infrastructure, things along that nature, or at least that's what they claimed that it was going to. However, only 10% of that massive $40 million or $40 billion package that was spent has actually been tracked to see whether or not it actually went to Ukraine.
That's what I was thinking about, because this goes back to the whole accountability thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, you can't have an like the only way we can hold them accountable is if we start to investigate some of these things.
Exactly.
Because you can only track 10% of $40 billion. And out of that 10%, out of that, you're only tracking really 10% of the 8.
Exactly. I mean, it's that they have, or at least Congress, who has the ability to control where this, or the ability for the Biden administration to be able to send this money over. They don't have any of the actual audits that was statutorily placed within the package that they passed. So the requirements of this $40 billion hasn't even been met to begin with, but yet they're already coming back to ask for more with this debt ceiling raise.
That goes back to what I was looking for earlier, right? And I think I found it. Representative Mike Turner from Ohio says that people on the Republican side are saying, why do we have to pass a $40 billion package to send $8 billion to Ukraine? That's the real question. Because once again, what are you actually doing? When are you going to allow us to hold you accountable for these actions? That's $32 billion that's missing. Well, the last time that amount of money went missing, it was the Catholic Church, and they put, like, the world wanted the Catholic Church investigating. So what does Biden think he's better than the Catholic Church?
Well, according to some of the reports, it is not the Biden administration directly, which is laughable, because the Biden administration placed all the Pentagon officials that are now overseeing where this allocation was supposed to be going in place. So it is the Biden administration that's actually doing this, which just goes back to the whole notion of this massive just fake news narrative that really has no bearing on any rational thought.
Yeah, just like every other thing that they have, like when they start talking about sending weapons, right? Because they're worried about provoking Putin.
Yeah, I mean, we see we saw the Biden administration really fighting or internally to decide what type of munitions or arms to send over to Ukraine after the Congress had passed this massive spending block for them, and they weren't able to decide whether or not they wanted to do a short range versus long range missile deterrence. They ultimately decided on short range, which they still ended up killing 2 Polish citizens with in Poland too. So,
I mean, and we talked about that last show. You know, I just think it's very interesting the way that they debate what they're going to do, because they're still going to make the decision. When us as Republicans and American citizens are asking, why is this even on your docket when we still have a lot of other things that are a problem here at home?
Oh yeah, I mean, there has been no accountability whatsoever under this Democrat regime that has been going on, and the fact that they want to pass through another massive spending bill or another massive debt escalation, even though they have been removed from the offices that they are holding, yet we would still be physically responsible for this new debt that they would be incurring. I mean, there's nothing there to say, or they're trying to really push the fact that we're just going to continue to blow American taxpayer money left and right, regardless of the ramifications that are going to come in the future, which we know are going to come in the future. One day, this will come back and bite us in the backside. I mean, every debt will be eventually fulfilled.
And that's my whole thing, right? Like, I get it. I get the whole Keynesian theory. The debt's not real as long as you're a sovereign. Like, but that's BS. You borrowed someone's money. Like, put a plan together at least. Like, that's all we're really asking. Like, we want to see a realistic plan for you all paying the debt back.
I want to see them pass a balanced budget amendment that doesn't allow them to spend more than they take in.
It all goes back to the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing to get back on track? You know, because if you're not working with your creditors, if you're not working with your lenders, if you're not working with anyone to see what you can do to get back on track, there's no point in it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, there's no point in us still buying treasury notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to see Democrats get in and try and shove or try and tell Americans that they need to pay more in taxes because there's a balanced budget in effect and they can't spend more than they're able to take in. That means that if you're not able to spend more than you're taking in, that means you're going to have to raise what you're taking in, meaning they're going to have to raise taxes.
Yeah.
I would love to see Democrats stay in office while that happens.
Well, here's the other thing too, right? And whoa, I can't believe this thought even came to my head. It's probably an easier conversation all the way around if you said that we had a balanced budget. If you could honestly show us on paper with numbers, why you really wanted to increase our taxes. If you went out here and actually said something along the lines of, well, you know what, over the next 50 years, if we collect X amount of dollars, then we could get blah, 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 blah to pay back all of our deficits. People might be interested, but they're not going to do that because that's not what their intention is. I bet you Republicans would do something like that because they want to solve the problem, not actually continue to inflate the issue.
So do you know the last time it really technically wasn't a true balanced budget was passed? It was more of a conflated balanced budget. Anyway, do you know what the last time an actual piece of legislation that would have been considered something along the balanced 90s. Budget? Late 90s, like 96 or 98.
That makes sense because the one time frame really sticks out in my head, and it was 41. 41 lost his election basically because he said, "Hey guys, look, we balanced the budget and we got to increase taxes."
Mm-hmm.
As detrimental as it was, his career, he stood firm on that because this is what it said. But this is why I think Democrats moved away from trying to balance the budget, because back then, if you remember, that was the Clinton era, and Clinton, before it was ruled unconstitutional, could go through the budget and say, hey, we want to scratch this line.
A line item veto.
Exactly. And once the line item veto was ruled unconstitutional, they couldn't do that to budgets anymore. And all of a sudden, they don't want to balance it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's truly heartbreaking to think that the federal government thinks that it can't be held to the same standards as what every American voter in the entire country is held to,
and every other elected official.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every elected body in the entire country outside of the actual federal government has to operate on a balanced budget.
Mm-hmm. And present it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just blows my mind that we continue to allow this stuff.
With no secretive allocations to dark hole DARPA projects either.
And still got to show like the audit itself. Got to have your auditors come up there and present it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can find all this on every municipality, including every state agency, everybody else's website, on where the presentations are, how the auditors did the math, how the finance people did their math. Like, see all the flow charts. You can find out every little detail of what every single person's being paid, but we don't hold that same accountability for federal agencies, federal staff, and for the federal government itself.
Nope. You have to pay for a lot of that information. Well, some of that information, and some of it is completely blacked out to public entirely. Yep. Yeah, so I mean, it's truly mind blowing to think about what it is that our federal government thinks that is so much better than the American citizens that vote them in office.
States' rights. So I
almost said it.
I'm going to get you converted.
It's not that I'm not converted. It's just I'm trying to keep us from really jumping into a lot of that. So, kind of talked about a little bit about how one of the leads that they're going to jump into being Fauci. I mean, it's interesting to think of all of the contradictions that man has spewed from his mouth, how he actually thinks he's going to be able to stand on two legs and make an argument that's going to keep him in the shining graces that he sees himself in. I mean, the man is probably one of the most narcissistic people on the face of the planet.
I agree with that. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly, especially now that he knows that Republicans are in office and he
That's the reason why he's retiring.
Well, not just retiring, right? But he can't backtrack fast enough before he retires.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, what's the statement here? Fauci says that he is completely open-minded to the origins of COVID-19, but added that scientific evidence strongly suggests that it was not a leak from a lab. Okay. Whose scientific evidence? Yours? Because a minute ago, like, let's fast forward, let's rewind 6 months and to where you were saying that this couldn't be, this isn't it, blah, 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 blah. Like, this was not manufactured. This is just the evolution of life. But yet.
And a year ago, when they were removing people from social media for posting that same comment that he had made right there for misinformation.
Yep.
How people were losing their or being deplatformed because of that aspect.
Deplatform? People were at risk of losing their jobs if they didn't lose their job. And now he wants to come out and say that, oh, well, actually, this could have been biological warfare with the people who we were in a trade war with. Oh, but, it's okay to say it now, but you couldn't say it then. Why, Fauci? I mean, no one, hey, come out and say it was the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have investigations.
Exactly. It's the whole reason why we have a specific committee dedicated to overseeing how the executive branch does its job.
Yep.
And I cannot wait until we see the results of some of this or hear some of this that's coming out. Like I just kind of had like a little thing pop in my head where you see like almost kind of a little GIF or another, that Warriors come out and play, except it's Democrats come out and play.
That is exciting, especially when we start talking about getting ready to go back to the streets of Chicago.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's coming up in a little bit on that one. Yeah, that's an entirely different.
But that's what
war zone in of itself.
Yeah, but that's what Fauci deserves right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like he can't go back and forth like this when so many lives have already been diminished or so many people
destroyed. Not diminished, destroyed.
You know what I mean? And damaged all because of, his direction in that office.
I mean, there were children that committed suicide because of his what his agenda and what he was pushing and his advice to shut down the schools.
Yep.
Children committed suicide because of that.
Yep. And we are in a completely worse off world than we would have been if we had allowed for more of herd community to take control. If you wanted a vaccine, then you could have gotten it. And not made it mandatory. But the direction that they took in to what we all know now is to steal votes, is just absolutely horrific.
He single-handedly made the division in America to a level that we haven't seen since the 1880s.
Yep.
Single-handedly.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
And on that note, we do like to make sure that we remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like and the share button on all of our content. We also invite our viewers to make sure they're subscribed to all of our content so you'll never miss any of our episodes. And you'll always be able to see Jamie's wonderfully smiling face and hear that incredibly infectious laughter. We also invite our viewers to go to our website at conservativetalk.org and hit that sponsor tab to help out with Jamie and I eventually being able to take over the world and keep people like Dr. Fauci from ever rising to power.
At least the metaverse and the media world.
Just the universe in general. Everything. We will control it all. So you were talking a little bit there about the vaccine mandates just a moment ago, and that kind of leads into another issue that has recently come up, and that being, there are rumblings of a Biden Trudeau quid pro quo, which I'm pretty sure that they decided that they were going to investigate and impeach a sitting president on.
Which I just have to go back and say, it never fails, right? Months later, after something like what happened at the border occurs, there will be leaks. There will be people who get way too intoxicated and talk too much at parties, and then eventually it gets out and about, and then eventually we will know the truth. And I'm so glad that this one has finally come to light, because it really points to what happened, because this is horrific.
Oh, yes. In more ways than just one. Because so this is something that really compounds on itself. You have the initial topic of, there being a Biden Trudeau kind of a quid pro quo there, and we'll get into that in a minute. And you see how that is compounded upon by how Trudeau really handled the situation in order to really affect that quid pro quo that would be coming in.
And, it's very interesting to me, because Canada, for the longest time, we're going to really get into this, has touted themselves as being a true democracy, right? They were the ones who didn't have to go through the scuffles of war, but yet they have done nothing but prove that they are just a socialist regime up under England.
I mean, they've proven, I believe it was Socrates, correct, in saying that democracies are the worst form of government.
Yep. This is why you have to have a republic.
So what we're referring to is the post-millennials actually come out with this. And so far, this is the only actual organization that I have been able to find any of this information out on. Well, I take that back, because they are basing this story on something that came out of the Daily Mail. So it's actually the Daily Mail that came out with the story that is now being reported on by the post-millennial. So what we're referring to is, according to the Daily Mail, 2 leaders reportedly spoke on the possibility of money, people, and political and media support from the United States during a conversation between Joe Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau, where they described the Freedom Convoy blockades as a shared problem, and Biden demanded that it be shut down.
See, this explains so much, right? Because a lot of people who, Canadians and U.S. citizens alike, felt that the swift action that Canada took to destroy the blockade was truly nothing more than like a socialist grab.
I mean, that was nothing more than that was Stalinism at its greatest.
Because here's the other thing, right? The only other time in modern history, okay, that we have seen something to that magnitude of a president and their administration, prime minister, however you want to, move in that regard, was the People's Republic of China once they took back Hong Kong. Because what happened was Hong Kong was under British control for so long that when China took it back over, you had a lot of people who were westernized living on the continent, and they were out in the streets protesting, and the People's Republic let it go on for so long. And then next thing you know, they went full communist. They started taking people to jail. They started beating them in the middle of the streets. They had no rights.
Political killings.
Yeah. They were killing the leaders, and they showed the world that, we're being fair about this, even though the rest of the world knew that the candidate that they put up, they were going to eventually kill that person, that they weren't going to win, that all these things were going to happen. For the first time, we saw Canada move in the exact same way. They seized people's Bitcoin. They literally arrested anyone who was out there protesting. They removed the services that Canada touts themselves for being so great for Canadian citizens who are out there.
They had vehicles towed. They had private property seized. I mean, it was any number of things to where they came in to shut this down as quickly as possible. And what we're referring to, that is the Freedom Convoy that was really going on back, I believe it was, when was
February?
it? In February, roundabout there. You saw a massive movement of truckers in Canada who were being told that they must be vaccinated or they cannot work. I mean, it's truckers, people who spend extraordinary amount of hours on the road in solitude by themselves, having to drive around, but yet they were being told that they must take this vaccine or they were going to lose their jobs.
Which is insane.
Yes.
Because you're already talking about people who, and I'm part of, weirdly enough, I'm part of a truckers organization, with, with a couple buddies of mine, and my buddies are truckers. I keep them informed. They help keep me informed. And, they were telling me about some of this stuff, and they just believe that it's absolutely crazy that for people who literally spend 90% of their time by themselves or with only their family inside of a truck barely at truck stops, trying to make sure that they make their quota already, who have to go through excruciating hours, have to actually now be forced to take a shot that they don't believe in because wherever they're delivering says that we don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's that was truly one of the most oppressive things that we had seen globally. And how this relates to us, like we said earlier, was Joe Biden said that this has to end. And he said this because, and I want to find this right here, is they were concerned and called this a shared problem because Biden was concerned about how this would affect the automobile industry in the Northeast, because you saw the steel manufacturers in Canada, because of all of the supply chain issues from steel coming up from China, we weren't able to bring in as much steel from there. So we were relying on other countries and bringing it across, and Canada was one of them. So we were relying on Canadian steel coming across, and if these truckers were blockading a lot of this transportation area, or if they just weren't transporting this product to begin with, then we would ultimately be hurting as far as our automotive industry area, which at the time was already hurting anyway because of the chip manufacturing shortage, as well as the fact that the Biden administration were paying people more money than they were making in these automotive built industries to stay at home than to go back to work.
And they continue to snowball with the problem.
Exactly.
The key thing for me on this was that they reported that, the blockade basically ended, or that Canada stopped it with an emergency action on February 14th, right? This call that they're saying took place between Canada's top bankers, one of the largest steel companies inside of Canada, and some of these individuals and other affected businesses between the U.S. and Canada. This call occurred on February 13th.
So the meeting with the steel industries, the bankers, and Canada took place on the 13th. The call took place on February 11th.
See?
So
it's like the Biden administration met on the 11th. The call between everyone affected on the Canadian side happened on the 13th. The 14th, they pass a bill that ended all of this.
And effectively criminalized protesters across the state, or across the country of Canada.
Which goes into my next worrisome point. The fact that he used the word worrisome when it comes to protesters.
Well, not just protesters. I mean, people that are out there fighting for their individual autonomy, their healthcare autonomy. Let's call it that.
So I think it's crazy because, when they'll call this whitewashing, right? But like when
never.
Well, what I mean is when I was taught in school, I always looked at Canadians as being these smug people, only because, it was always told us that Canadians thought they were better because they'd have to fight for their freedom, because they protested to get their freedom from England. Well, now they have a prime minister who's saying that it's worrisome that people will protest in order to try to get some kind of policy change. That's kind of interesting.
Yes. So I want to read this quote directly here. So Trudeau said that the protesters' demands were immediately a non-starter. So he said some of their asks are non-starters, like overturning the results of the election we just had. Okay, that was such a minor, minuscule, such a tiny actual portion of everything that they were wanting. I mean, it was one thing of 30 that they were wanting.
Yeah.
And he said, so he came back and he started saying, in terms of responding to their demands or legitimizing them by engaging, I'm worried about setting a precedent that setting a blockade on Wellington Street can lead to the change of public policy. People need to be heard, but we need to get that balance right. He said, if you are out protesting that the government is shutting down safe injection sites or something, you are asking for changes in public policy. But there is a difference between occupations and saying we are not going until this is changed. In a way, this is massively disturbing and potentially dangerous versus saying we're protesting because we want public policy to change and we're trying to convince people and get enough of them that politicians will listen and say, I'm going to lose votes unless I change this. That's the usual way protests can be effective in our democracies. So what he's saying there is
that's laughable.
You can go out, hold up a banner and say, we don't support this. And that's completely fine. But if you're actually effective in your protest and halt and hurt government, then it's worrisome. It's troubling.
You know, we've talked about this multiple times when it comes to BLM and, you know, all that other kind of mess, Democrat, Antifa and all that, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the difference in between that and what the freedom blockade did and why Justin Trudeau wants more of this, you know, energy that BLM's doing is because it doesn't have anything. They're not coming up with meaningful ways of actual change or legislation or ways of doing it. They're not effectively doing anything other than pissing people off. And for anyone who's in the industry, they know, like, okay, I'm gonna be mad. Give me 24 hours. I won't forget about you even happening. You know, this is why people like Justin Trudeau feel that it's more effective, is because he knows that in the grand scheme of things, them, you know, sitting in tents for a week is not going to affect anything or change anything. Them shutting down trade is going to change something to where he actually has to act.
Mm-hmm. Something else that's interesting that's coming out of all of this as well is, and I know you're aware of this because we spoke about this on one of our previous shows, is that they're actually beginning to institute a massively overreaching gun ban as well. Yep. And we know firearms protect us against tyrannical and overreaching governments.
Yep.
So when you have a government that's coming in and banning firearms, of course, now they're going to be able to do whatever they want to.
Yep. Like that's Canada's sole motto.
Mm-hmm. And we want to keep in mind, we want to ask our viewers to remember and keep this in mind. Joe Biden started this.
Yep.
It was the conversation between Trudeau and Biden that said, we will get you money, people, political, and media backing if you shut this down within 12 hours. We need this shut down because it could potentially hurt us. So based on Joe Biden and his administration's little push towards this, Canadians are now being seen, are now having their rights, their freedoms, their individualities trampled on by the socialist Trudeau.
They had Canadians who couldn't even cross the border for over a year because of these policies. And this is what the Biden administration and the left want us to be more like. They're like, why can't we be like Canada? Why can't we have healthcare like Canada? Why can't we have gun control like Canada? It's because it's the most un-American thing that you can possibly think of.
Talking about Canadians not being able to cross the border, just South Park jumped in my head.
I really, you know what really put my... only our millennial friends will understand this. Like, you know, one of the biggest pop stars out right now is Drake.
Okay.
I know. Right. Anyway. And Drake is from Toronto.
Oh yeah. He was in that Degrassi show, wasn't he?
Yes. He had to have his fellow Canadian, Justin Bieber, who was banned from coming home because he had spent so much time and he didn't meet the deadline. So like they basically gave Canadians a deadline. You either home by this date or you don't come home. So Justin Bieber stayed at his house in California. Long story short, right? Justin Bieber had to make a music video for Drake pretending to be Drake because Canada wouldn't let him out. I know. Canadians, man. Blame Canada. So Justin Bieber singing somebody else's song, going through the motions of a music video. And they even laugh about it because he's like, hey, I need to call in the favor because they're going to make me do this video and I can't leave Canada.
Wow.
I know there's not. Where do we go from there? Because like that's a lot.
Yeah.
But it just goes back to the point of
So what you're essentially saying is that Joe Biden hates Drake.
What I'm essentially saying is socialism has no endless level of control. When
that too,
you know what I mean? Like when you got two.
You're not as equipped for the headlines though. You gotta learn.
Hey, look, but I mean, like for our listeners, if I say socialists hate Drake, or Biden hates Drake, next thing you know, Drake will be doing the promo for Joe Biden.
Does him anyway.
He doesn't.
Well,
the rest of them do.
If you say so, I really wouldn't know. But we do like to remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content. That helps Jamie and I to get organically in the news feed and help spread our message a lot further and wider. We also invite all of our viewers to make sure they're hitting the subscribe button. That way they'll always stay up to date on all the content that we do produce. You'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredibly smiling face and hear that amazingly infectious laughter. We also like to ask our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help Jamie and I to eventually be able to take over the universe, metaverse, and every other verse out there. We will own the multiverse.
The multiverse.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
So with that in mind, let's jump on something that's a little bit brighter in the context of because it's dimmer.
Yeah. Brighter in the sense too of the fact that like more people have seen the light when it comes to home protection and protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, personal protection in general. I mean, the fact that so according to a report that had just been released, you had somewhere between almost 19 million people between 2015 to 2019. You're seeing upwards of 16 million people that are saying that they do own firearms in a sense. And then you see around 6,000 gun owners carried handguns every day in 2019. And that was up from 3,000 in 2015. Although, and that is from a study from the American Journal of Health that was published on November 16th. Although I will say that number is maybe a fraction of what actual concealed carry and open carry people are in the country. I mean, 6,000 across the entire country.
And they're saying that doubled from the number of people that they interviewed or asked, or surveyed, whatever, from 3,000 in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So you've gone from now, basically 3,000 more people are willing to admit that they carry their gun with them everywhere. whereas the rest of us will never admit what we have on us at all.
The entire purpose of concealed carrying is for no one else around you to know that you are carrying a firearm in case somebody dumb decides to come out and do something dumb.
Yeah.
And you have that responsibility upon yourself, not only to protect yourself, but to protect the others that are around you.
100% agree.
And they're
willing to admit.
Well, yeah, exactly. Willing to admit. It's true. Willing to admit. And I will say that double number in those 4 years are probably people that turned 21 within those 4 years because they don't understand the ramifications and really have a lot of experience with a lot of that. Because you get into a lot of the folks that, I mean, I can think of 6,000 people just here in Northwest Georgia that carry every day.
Yeah, yeah. And who would never tell us all.
Because if you do tell anybody, then you're a target.
You're a target.
You're the first target. Because as long as they take out that person they know is carrying has a firearm, then
what
everything else is open. It's open season.
Which is another key point that I think it's very important that we highlight as to why we, advocate for not really disclosing whether you have it on your person or not, is because if more people know that you're carrying or it's visible, then they're going to target you first in an instance where they're trying to, cause mass harm to people.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the whole idea behind concealed carry is not allow anyone to know that you are carrying. I mean, it's as long as nobody knows you're not the prime target, as well as it's in the back of everybody else's mind, is I don't know who all in this room might be carrying.
Yep.
So that's a mental blocker in of itself.
It's another way to increase the safety.
It's a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Is what it's referred to as. It's that whole mystique behind it.
Good term.
Little military terminology there. Throwing that out there. So I do want to say that, and one of the reasons why that we're bringing this up, and this is kind of just a very pointed example of one of the reasons why concealed carry and these carry permits are even in, if you of my mindset and with Jamie's mindset, just constitutional carry, to where you don't need a permit or anything along that line. As long as you're a law-abiding and legal citizen, you should be able to carry a weapon wherever you go.
Yep.
So there was a 23-year-old woman who who 4 grown adult men tried to hijack while in Chirac over the weekend, and she shot one of them in the head.
Yep. Good for her.
Absolutely.
Like that.
I honestly wish she had shot all 4 of them.
And the beautiful thing is she had a permit in Chicago, which is almost nearly impossible to get.
Yes.
But that in itself will help show and prove that lawlessness that's been running rampant in Chicago is another action that needs to be looked at. And concealed carry is a defender against all that lawlessness.
Oh, yeah. So we are not advocates of any sort of a violent nature in, I would say, 99.9% of these instances in regards in that. And I'm not going to speak for Jamie in doing this, but I am wholeheartedly glad she shot this guy in the head, and I hope she killed him.
Hey,
I wish she had shot all the rest of the other 3 of them and killed every single one of them.
You got to think about the fact that these are 4 grown men who went to take advantage of a 23-year-old girl in an instance to steal
by
her
herself
stuff.
to steal her.
And there's no telling what other heinous acts would have come from that.
Exactly.
That gun and her quick actions and quick thinking saved her life.
Mm-hmm.
And damn the demon that tried to take it.
Mm-hmm. According to the report, all 4 of them were armed. She was injured in the process. Apparently, she was shot in the arm. So, I mean, that just goes to show the danger that she herself was in, because after she shot one guy in the head, somebody else shot her.
Yep.
So, I mean, these are very dangerous situations, and that is because you have a lot of these Democrat cities that are just really escalating and ramping this whole notion of the lawlessness that is going on in their municipalities. I mean, you saw what Mayor Fishface said in her little quote, where she said it was sickening about what happened in that little shooting, or in that shooting that happened in Colorado Springs, where she completely ignored the fact that she was the
epicenter.
Yeah, well, she is the major leading elected official in Chirac. And Jamie knows the story behind with Chirac. It's his term that I'm borrowing on that.
Because that's what it is. I mean, like, it is a militarized zone inside the United States that no one wants to recognize. And I mean, they pull these videos down.
Gang controlled.
Yeah, it's gang controlled. It's I mean, there used to be videos, people walking around with literally rocket launchers in the middle of these Chicago streets. It got nicknamed the name of Chirac. I want to say in about 2014, because the violence had gone so far, it grown so high, and it's gone so far over the last couple of years. And one thing I really want to look at too is robberies. Speaking of this case, robberies have surged 15% in 2022, according to Chicago police.
Mm-hmm.
That is a upgrowing trend that they continue to see. And then the state itself now will not even pursue people until up to 48 hours.
Yes. So there is a distinct difference between the categorization of robbery and burglary. So with burglary, it's kind of like what you see or what we saw during 2020, where you see a massive group of people rush into a store and begin stealing everything in sight there. That's burglary. Robbery is when you use a force application in order to steal. It's you are threatening the use of force. You are essentially compounding theft with assault.
Mm-hmm.
That is what robbery is. So this uptick in 11% is saying that there are 11% more forceful thefts in that count and in that city than there were the year previously.
And yeah. And that was the statistics, right? It's up 15%, but 11% is compiled on top of that since 2020,
Mm-hmm.
which means that once again, they continue to promote lawlessness and the numbers are showing it.
Okay.
And that's something that as a state, they really need to get a control under, because you're going to have more and more situations like this with less people having, concealed carry permits or even the ability to purchase a weapon because of the laws they put in place.
Yes. I mean, it is incredible to think that people actually have the mindset that if we become more just if we become weaker, or if we become more subservient, or if we become more compliant than anything else, then these numbers will drop. No, that's not how this happens. People will always prey on the weak.
If we just do what the government says, they'll keep us safe. That's the mindset that some people believe, and I don't understand that.
Ask Japanese Americans how that worked for them.
Yeah, it's literally martial law.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. That's the mentality that they're trying to condition certain people in these cities to be okay with. Is so that at 8 o'clock, when the military rolls down the street to make sure that everybody's in their home, they're okay with it.
I mean, that might be what's needed for Chicago for a little while.
They tried to
clean it out.
They tried that, and then it got a little ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, it wasn't Chicago when they did that, but it was other places.
Mm-hmm. Free that armed force. Well, free the National Guard up a little bit more. Open up the rules of engagement a little bit more. You ask people to play stupid games and let them win stupid prizes.
I just really can't believe of how far, the Windy City is gone. If you want to know the truth.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it's gone. That's for sure.
This is where we hold true to trade. You know what I mean? Like
with the commodities. Yep.
This was a bedrock of America.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's so lawless.
It's a war zone of America.
That literally people cannot, you can commit a crime and they can't even begin to look for you, find you, anything for 48 hours.
Well, I mean, you commit a crime and be convicted of it and then leave the state if you're placed on home monitoring, which they place 90% of any of their offenders on home monitoring. Then they can't look for you for 48 hours.
Well, it's the same thing as you commit a crime. I mean, they're going to look for you, but they still have there's a certain level within that 48-hour window, right? Mm-hmm. That's the key, the 2 days. And that is very critical in any crime for anyone who is investigating it. That is, they're basically taking the most critical time in any form of investigation out of the equation and then saying, okay, onward and forward.
You watch too much A&E, my friend. I know what you're talking about. But this is
IDTV.
This is also something that it's not just in Chicago that's going on. I mean, we'll take a look at another major Democrat city, and that being Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, businesses are shutting down. Higher end businesses that don't cater, or businesses that wouldn't generally cater to, I guess you would say, your everyday American are having to shut down because they are losing so much merchandise because of break-ins that are going on, because their products are of a higher end nature. They're more expensive than what your everyday cost or your everyday items are. They're being broken into and burglarized almost consistently on almost an every night basis, and they cannot maintain or they're not able to maintain a just even a moderately successful business. They are being tanked. Money's flying out of their pockets left and right. And insurance companies do not cover this, by the way. Despite what the Democrat narrative is, they do not cover this.
When you're getting robbed of, 6 pairs of $100 jeans per day, then your insurance company is not going to cover that.
They will drop you like that.
And not even think twice about it.
No.
And the sad thing is that these sanctuary cities who have, continued to harbor lawlessness. This is Portland is one of the same places that we talk about when Antifa took over the Capitol. Once again, this is just another proof as to why these policies are not sustainable in a free society. If you want to go back to the rules of the jungle, by all means,
they'll lose that one in a heartbeat.
That's what they're fighting for.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. So the business that we're referring to is it's a business that was Rain something or another. It's a higher end kind of boutique apparel shop. They were burglarized 15 times within 2 weeks. After the third burglary third burglary instance, their insurance company hasn't paid out anything. So at some point it becomes unprofitable for insurance companies to continue to support companies like this. So why would they do it? They see it as the company not doing enough to protect their own merchandise. So they are a risk or an unsurable asset. So if they're a risky or an uninsurable asset, they're not going to insure them. Because if you don't want to protect your own merchandise enough, why should anybody else cover the financial ramifications if you're not trying to protect it?
Which is why businesses like this are relocating. If you can't, Elon Musk and Tesla is the perfect first example of when the policies of your state continue not to align with what makes it profitable to sustain your business. It's time to move.
Now imagine this: give that shop owner an open carry license, and every employee in that store have an open carry license.
Allow them to blast.
I guarantee you that wouldn't happen anymore.
From dust we were made, so dust we shall return.
And they'll send them back to dust in a heartbeat. I would hope so anyway.
And that's how you, I hate to say it, but we can only have conversations for so long before there is some form of action that has to be taken. And that's not an advocacy for violence or anything of that nature.
Well,
that's
nature.
That's just the realities of life. When you continuously are not being heard and continue to be pushed on by a certain ideology, a certain belief system, you have to fight back.
You mean kind of like truckers in Canada?
Exactly like truckers in Canada.
Yeah, I say arm them. Let them go.
Agree with you.
So we do like to take a moment real quick to remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content. Also invite them to hit the subscribe button. That way they'll always stay up to date on all of our content, as well as never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredibly infectious laughter. We also like to invite our viewers to make sure they're going to our website at conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab and helping us out by becoming a sponsor to eventually allow Jamie and I to take over every universe in existence and in existence in theoretical existence. Like how I keep up in the game on that one, don't you?
You're so funny.
Well, with that, let's jump into our next topic that we're talking about, and that's kind of CNN really screwed the pooch when it comes to coverage of the rail strike.
Like, I don't understand CNN's logic. This is how you know that you're just kind of the undergarments of an administration. You just kind of keep everything nice and snug for them, because what we're talking about is there's another railroad strike that's coming up. And inside of that railroad strike, CNN, as well as the Biden administration, wants to let everyone know that Christmas will not be affected, that everything else will be affected, though. Your food, your gasoline supply, your vehicle, if you want to get a new one. But we promise that, you'll be able to get your retail stuff. So make sure you get out there and spend some more money.
Keep that economy flowing.
That's the answer. But we're not in a recession.
Yeah, it's funny that they are saying that. And I want to read the title of this real quick. This is a CNN article. It says, "A rail strike won't screw up your holidays. Here's how it'll affect you in other ways." They talk about how it's not going to mess up your holidays or your Christmas or whatever it is you celebrate. but it's going to affect every other aspect of your life. Now, every other aspect that it's going to affect automatically affects what you're going to be able to spend for these holidays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's how I don't understand how this is even allowed through the editor's process. I mean, how does something like this slip through the cracks?
Here's my favorite paragraph in this, right? A prolonged rail strike could create all types of shortages, from gasoline to food to automobiles, and cause a spike in the prices of all the types of consumer goods. It can screw up commutes for tens of thousands of workers who take the train to work, slow the delivery of parts, and force facilities to shut down. But one area that most likely won't see immediate or severe disruption will be Christmas. Who wrote that?
How does that even make sense?
How are you allowed to write that? So I can't get to work. I can't buy gasoline for work. I can't get a new car, or if my car breaks, I can't get parts for it. If something were to happen to me, like
the places that make the products that I want to buy for Christmas or other holidays are going to be able to,
are going to have same issues.
Yes.
They're not going to be able to get truck parts for their stuff when they're shipping things in. They're not going to be able to get rail carts to drop off the goods to the places that ship and have the cars trucked in. But everything's okay. Christmas will be okay.
Biden saved Christmas.
Guys.
and their logic behind this, and this is the vice president of global consultancy, Kiernan's transportation practice, and a logistics veteran. His name is good grief, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Guntor is his last name. He said the stuff that needs to move for the holidays has already been moved by rail.
So I just have a real here's my real question. Okay, this is America, and we stopped going out on Black Friday to beat people up probably a decade ago. So we don't care about what's in the store. Like, is my Cyber Monday going to be affected? Because when I need my goods shipped in by Amazon, like, is the ship that's supposed to carry my goods to Amazon, my Amazon delivery service, like, is it going to be okay? You know, like.
It's already on the counters of your local retail store, so you're fine.
So when I go to Alibaba and I order something to be shipped to Amazon because it's cheaper,
it's already on Walmart shelf. You don't have to worry about it.
But if I don't use Walmart, Walmart pickup,
it's already on Walmart.
Because the last time I used Walmart pickup, they screwed up my order.
It doesn't matter. It's already on Walmart shelf. It's already been shipped by rail.
That's not a dig at Walmart, because I cannot live without you guys. But I'm just saying.
Even if you order from Alibaba to Amazon to your home, it doesn't matter, because Walmart has already shipped it by rail.
Oh, because they're like Target.
No, that's their reasoning. That's their rationale behind it.
I get you, but they're like Target.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
They did an algorithm that predicts what I'm supposed to get before I know I'm supposed to get it.
It wasn't even that. It's just this is such BS that it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you could have ordered, a flying helicopter from who knows, like Amazon, Alibaba, wish list, whatever. But it's okay because JCPenney has penny loafers on stock.
Look.
And it's on the shelves at your local store.
I noticed too, whoever wrote this repeated the same paragraph twice inside of it. That's how you did. That's how you know that they intentionally did this just to fill space, because they were like, no one reads us anyway.
It just goes to show you that
only jackwagons like Jamie and Justin, to put another dig, would read a CNN article.
But I mean, in all honesty, this rail strike that's coming up is incredibly, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
I mean, we're already in inflationary areas. I mean, we are in a recession. Our inflation's well above a 40-year high. We are looking at this upcoming rail strike that is likely to happen on December 9th as costing the economy upwards of $1 billion just on the first day alone, and upwards of $2 billion for every subsequent day after that.
Yep.
And economic loss. I mean, in an economy that produces upwards of potentially $30 trillion as a GDP. That's not a significant amount, but it's enough to where it jumps prices up 50%, or jumps up 50 cents. It jumps it up $1. It jumps it up
correct
$1.50. It's incremental, and it's a slow creep. It's not going to hurt it just that first day. It's that slow creep of what we're going to see.
They say that project it in the first, half of a week, $91 billion will be lost, because then you start adding into agricultural spoils and everything else that's, food products, anything of that nature that also has a shelf life will now also be an issue.
Just think that $91 billion over the first 3.5 days are going to be transferred over to the American consumer. So think about that.
We're going to pay for it anyway, because they're going to get it back some kind of way. Gasoline.
320 million citizens. You're looking at $91 billion affecting. That transfer is going to hurt.
Yeah, you're looking on average, everybody's already lost, $4,000 to $10,000 in purchasing power just off of what's already been accounted for in inflation alone. Now you add in the additional spoilage of what's getting ready to happen up under a strike, all because the Biden administration still cannot get it together.
Our local county government's looking at a little over 9% cost of living raise just on basis of last year, upwards of $2,900 just as a cost of living increasement there.
Yep.
Almost $3,000 cost of living adjustment in a single year.
And that's literally just to make sure that people have the same level of purchasing power.
Just ridiculous. But and on that note, we do like to take a moment to remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content, as well as subscribing to all of our social media pages. That way you'll never miss a single moment of our episodes and always be able to catch up on Jamie's incredibly infectious laugh when he's feeling, like we deserve it. Also, we invite our viewers to make sure they're going to our website at conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab and becoming a sponsor today, because it is because of our sponsors that we are able to continue to produce this content. So Jamie and I may effectively one day be able to come in and take over the world, the multiverse, the universe,
all the verses.
Anything out there.
Vice versa.
Exactly. Deja vu's, the vice versa. Yeah, all of it. We will rule supreme.
Don't tell the Supreme that, though. He might get mad.
Or the Queen. Don't tell the Queen.
Don't tell the Queen. I'll tell the Queen.
And with that in mind, we do, or so we have something else that has come across our table that really stands out as flagrant hypocrisy, and
at its finest.
Yeah, and that is something that Buck brought to our attention.
Buck always kind of points out the things that kind of slip through the cracks that most people don't pay attention to.
Oh, yes.
And Buck brought this article to our attention that goes back to, last week, really. Joe Biden's, transportation director and through the administration has decided that they want to have approved the construction of the country's largest oil export terminal, the Seaport Oil Terminal off of the Gulf shores of Texas, which has a capacity of shipping out 2 million barrels of oil per day. Wow. Like, for one, if you just allowed us to get with the Keystone Pipeline, we'd already been there.
Yeah.
But now he wants to ship out this policy. And here's the real kicker. Days after he was at a climate control conference and said that we are going to reduce our carbon footprint.
Not just that. There's something else that they spoke about that wasn't really covered in this article. Are you aware that we are now going to be paying reparations for climate?
Yeah. I was waiting.
Yeah. We are now going to be paying reparations to other countries who have not become as economically developed because they have experienced natural disasters that have gone on and have contributed it to a climate change.
So at the same conference that, Joe Biden came out and snubbed, he literally went out there and said that, we sign on with the rest of these other industrialized countries to where we will pay reparations, climate change reparations to poorer countries who have been affected by natural disasters more frequently than everyone else due to our footprint on the environment.
Yeah. If there has never been a better reason to get out of the UN, I cannot think of a single one. We're already footing almost 2/3 of the overall UN budget, yearly budget.
But here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. How gullible do you have to be to where someone can convince you that you got to pay because Mother Nature keeps damaging my country and it's your fault? Look. That's like Florida going to France and saying, I need $2,000 per person for next year because next year's hurricane is going to destroy my house, even though I chose to live here and continue to choose to live here instead of trying to find a way to get out.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, oh, well, they're poor. They can't help it. They can't help but move. That's the most biased thing I've ever heard in my life, because I don't know anybody who can't afford a bus ticket somewhere.
The funny thing about it is a lot of these poor countries, some of these island countries are some of the most sought after places to live in and to retire to in the world. Their real estate prices are astronomical.
And here's the thing that really continues to get me. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that it is good to be conscious about the things that happen in the environment, right?
Yeah.
Pull the plastic out of the ocean. That's not a bad thing.
No.
Right? But if we were really having a problem, to your point, banks wouldn't be investing in these places. They wouldn't be authorizing 30, 40, 50-year loans to go for an $18 million house on a piece of property that's supposed to be underwater within the next 5 years. Why would they do that? This just goes to show you that no banker believes this. Not a single one. Because if you honestly believed in climate change and believed it was a problem, you would not authorize that loan.
I mean, that's why Obama has was a $34 million estate right on the coastline, almost literally just above sea level.
Here's another question
that he just recently bought. By the way,
here's the thing, though, right? If I was from Hawaii and I was the former president of the United States and I had all this excluded information, okay, all this is exclusive information. When I move all my family and friends inland, would I not build? I wouldn't build a new house there, and I wouldn't keep my family there unless I was just cynical.
Maybe you just don't like them. Maybe you just don't like that the laugh is deeper than yours.
Because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you make an investment like that? If you're literally going out here and telling people that the world is going to end in 30 years, why would you take a 30-year mortgage? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? The world's ended anyway. I might as well just give up $2,000. Might as well give you $5,000, a month. Might as well give you $1 million a quarter to pay for my outrageously expensive house.
Yeah.
That I can't pass down, that I'm just going to pay to a bank because that's what we want to do.
Maybe he's not just buying like the actual land. Maybe he's buying like the kind of like what China's doing now. When it all floods over, he's going to come out and drop a bunch of sand in there and have his own little island nation right there on his property in his estate. Or maybe kind of buy the airspace right above it to where he can't allow anybody to fly through unless they pay him first.
That would be interesting. I didn't look that up. So here's
again, that's just some of what Buck's talking about.
I will say this. Okay. So FEMA creates these flood maps.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were in the flood map area, you can't.
What I do?
You can't build there. You can't build there.
I know I opened up the wrong door on this.
Right. But what they do is they will allow for modifications, right? If you can prove and justify why you can raise the elevation and where you're going to distort the water. Okay. If he didn't do any of that, then especially as former president, he damn sure don't plan on climate change affecting his property. Because I don't know how you get a whole island out of a flood map. just naturally.
Maybe he's thinking that that the ocean will, I guess, go far enough inland to where it will become international waters.
That's just as wild as that one Democrat who said the island was going to turn upside down.
You mean Hank Johnson from Atlanta?
Because I don't know how an island turns upside down when it's like, it's attached. Like there's nothing that turns it. Like it's attached.
That's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee too.
Look, I'm just saying, like there's some lack of science there. Yeah. Like I don't know if they realize that like that's formed because lava came up and then spewed out from the ocean floor. So you really can't like turn it over. It's not a boat.
I mean, we even dropped two nuclear bombs on an island, and it still didn't turn over.
Didn't even give it a hole.
No.
I saw
burned some shadows into the concrete, but no holes.
That's a whole nother thing, right? Like it didn't create a crater. I just don't understand their logic. I really don't get it. But people believe it. And they believe that even though you can still get a 30-year mortgage, that the bank's going to risk millions of dollars for the same people who are telling you that climate change is real. They're going to risk that amount of money. I just don't know.
Yeah. But, it's Biden, so we'll give him a pass. His just slip into gentle dementia is just something that we have become accustomed to.
I do want to make a note because I think this is very important.
No, okay, go ahead.
Because if you ever wanted to see how hard the hypocrisy of the Biden administration and of climate change is, the amount of carbon dioxide that will be released from the new terminal is roughly 4% of the U.S.'s total greenhouse gases emitted in 2020. So when they were beating up President Trump about not being effective on climate change, in one piece of legislation, Joe Biden will amount for 4% of that.
An increase over what was dubbed as the highest pollutant year in the history of mankind.
Yep. And at this conference, right, Biden says that we see our mission to avert climate change catastrophes and size a new clean energy economy, not only as it's basically our part of the future and the present and of history. So stumbled through that to say this. He then turned around and did the complete opposite of what he promised everyone at this conference that he was going to do.
A week later. Can't sum it up any better than that.
Yeah, extreme disappointment.
Yeah, I'm saying, put it mildly. And with that, we do like to take a moment and make sure that we do remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on all of our content, on all of our platforms. We also invite you to subscribe to all of our platforms. That way you'll stay up to date on all of our content we do produce. You'll always be able to come back and see Jamie's incredibly smiling face and hear that roaringly infectious laughter. We also like to ask our viewers to make sure they're going to conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to. It is because of our sponsors that Jamie and I are able to continue to produce our content and really spread our infection across the United States to ultimately take over the world one of these days. Like how I used to spread our infection, right?
Spread our infection. That's for you, Fauci.
Absolutely. So we do like to also take a moment to recognize our affiliates, and that is Net News Network. You can find them at netnewsnetwork.net. We also want to say thank you to Veterans for America First, as well as their media arm, Vet Voice. So, Jamie, with that in mind, would you like to give your reminder?
Yes. It is a glorious 6 days until we perform the Lord's work and do a continuous exorcism and get rid of the false prophet.
You know, as soon as we get rid of him, Georgia will have taken a complete clean sweep to everything they did in 2020.
Yep.
Well, I say a complete sweep. Outside of one seat, a complete sweep.
Well, that's because that one's not up yet.
Yes, exactly. Well, okay, 2 seats. One will be up in 2 years. The other will be up in 4 years.
I'm missing one.
Senate president.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was talking about us as the glorious state of Georgia as a whole and our representation, but, whatever. We'll get rid of Biden eventually.
Yeah, and not saying that Georgia elected him.
Because we didn't.
He is the president, and we'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But Jamie, with that in mind, do you have any final thoughts?
My final thought is, look, I joke about this a lot, but the main thing is that we have to get people out here to vote. December 6th is very important. Early voting has started. We just had the Sunday early voting, but which is going to be the only one of those, but we got to get it done in the next 6 days. December 6th is very key, very, very, very key when it comes to making sure that we continue to hold steady our conservative values in the state of Georgia.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, no, that is imperative. We have to make sure that Herschel or that the Republican nominee is the one that comes into the new office, because outside of that, Democrats hold enough votes in the Senate to begin to institute what they're wanting to do.
If someone who is in your life is 10 years old right now, they will be driving on their own by the time we have another shot at taking the seat back.
Mm-hmm.
That's how important this is.
Yep.
This is for 6 years. And then in 2026, we'll have the option to finish the job and get rid of Ossoff. But right now, the focus has to be on making sure that we get rid of Raphael Warnock and elect Herschel Walker.
Elect the Republican nominee. So with that in mind, he's talking about the 10 and being able to drive. Think of this. Say your child is just now starting middle school in 6th grade. This seat will not be up for another re-election until they are beginning or until they have already started their senior year in high school.
Yep.
Just think of the amount of effect that could have on your child's life.
And the policies that can come through from having someone this radical represent you over that time frame,
or not represent you over that time frame. Well, with that terrifying thought in mind, this is Conservatives Talk, and we will see y'all soon.
Get out and vote.